Hey there, welcome to tennis elbow or lateral epicondylitis. You'll hear me using both terms fairly interchangeably as it can be a little bit of a mouthful to keep saying lateral epicondylitis. Treatment goals are quite straightforward here, nothing really mind-blowing. It's just more fun because we're using it in the context of a Pilates reformer. So typical mobilizations for the wrist, so some stretching into flexion and extension, supination, pronation, and then strengthening into all of those planes. And then towards the end, we're really integrating more of the elbow flexion and extension in addition to that wrist strengthening as well. Starting off with my usual manual therapy warm-up for tennis elbow. This can be done either right on the carriage or on your treatment table. So for me, if I have a client coming in and it's a short appointment, like 30 minutes, I'll just have them lie down right on the carriage straight away. If you're tight for space, you don't have a private area, you can also do this on the reformer. But if I do have a longer appointment and we're working on more things, so for example, if the appointment is an hour long and we're working on, I don't know, some core stability or their neck, for example, I'll have them start off on the treatment table and then move them over. So when we warm up or when I'm doing the mobilizations or manual therapy, I'm doing my dry needling, my gua sha, my scraping, any IMS, like with a stim tool. I might be doing some joint mobilizations depending on where they're stuck. So I'll have a little pillow propped under the elbow if need be, just to bring up the work surface a little bit higher. And I've got my rolly stool with me. So starting with some loaded warm up, I have in this first clip 2-pound toning balls. And it's a lovely little combination of flexion, extension, as well as pronation and supination. So you'll notice that I'm moving through full range pronation and supination while maintaining wrist flexion. So I'm stretching out the extensors all the way from pronation, supination. Of course, you're going to do this with arms extended because you're going to get more range that way. But because you can't see my hands when I do that, I'm going to stay down here. So you're keeping those wrists flexed, moving through from supination into pronation and then back again. But I'm adding in a little bit of an extension at end range. So going from pronation, little flexion, go back to extension, all the way through to supination, a little extension, back to flexion, right? So all the way through, extension, flexion, all the way back through supination, flexion, extension, flexion. If it's too confusing, just stay in one range and just go through back and forth. So I'm staying in flexion, going through supination, pronation. And then if you want, you can stay in extension and move through pronation, supination that way. And that kind of cuts out all that coordination work. But sometimes the coordination work is part of the fun. So I like 2 pounds. That gives a good amount of stretch. If the person is really quite acute, then I would stay with 1 pound. Okay, so for the remainder of the videos, you're going to be seeing me using a lot of strap work. I do use the handles when I'm working on the wrists. And that's because with the firm grip here or the harder, firmer feedback, you're going to be able to access those muscles a little bit better. You're going to be able to really target the wrist flexion and extension. Try it out. If you have the straps only, try it with the straps, see how it works. But you may find yourself really wanting to switch to these if you have them available or even just investing in a pair. So we're going to take this exercise and we're going to move into a more upright position now. You'll see in the starting position here that I have the straps underneath the armpits, okay? And that's really important because if they go over top, they can really rub on the forearms, and you'll notice right away if you don't have them quite right. The kneeling position, of course, is optional if you wish to be cross-legged. If you want to be sitting on a box, that's also an option. That's covered in my foundational course. If you haven't done that already, you may wish to really grab the basics in there. So we're moving through, again, full range pronation and supination, keeping the wrist extensors on stretch and then adding in a wrist flexor stretch at the end. Okay, so again, it's really up to you how much range you're going to be moving through, but we are keeping the elbows relatively soft so that we can get a little bit more range of motion, I should say. Let's watch that one more time. This is also a really great opportunity to work on a little bit of scapular proprioception, especially if you're finding that their tendinitis is feeding up the fascial chain. So, making sure they're not coming forward, there's no pinching of any sort happening, or overuse of the long head of biceps tendon as well. So this is a really great way to cue for centering of that glenoid in the humeral head in the glenoid. Thank you. Okay, so if you also have access to these little spinny discs, they're about, I want to say like 10 inches in diameter. These are a fun little way to get a whole body stretch, get a little back stretch. It feels really, really nice. If we watch the video, we're going to be moving back into shoulder flexion. So we're moving back into a child's pose. Here we go. And I'm in pronation. And then coming forward, I'm going to move into supination. So again, getting all of those fibers combined through pronation, supination, extension, and wrist extension and flexion. So much talking. And the really nice thing about this exercise is you get a little bit of deep core and adductor work. So because the hands are a little bit unstable, we really have to find more stability through the hips to push the carriage back and generate that strength. It feels really, really nice. You can encourage a little bit of spinal flexion or extension depending on your client, depending on their tendencies, whatever you like. So I'm really hoping, with these exercises, you can really start to see how you can get your creative brain cells going and flip these to anyone that might be having medial aspect issues, right? So you might want to stay in a wrist flexor stretch as you move through pronation, supination, and then add the extension stretch at the end. It's entirely up to you. And then with this one here, you can also imagine we're getting a little bit of shoulder work as well for anyone that needs it. So many opportunities. I'm already so excited. But let's get on to phase 2. We'll pause these ones here. And now we're adding in more progressive loading, some true strengthening through the extensors. So this is semaphore. Again, you'll find this in my foundational course. But we're again with the handle, we're just adding that little wrist flick. We're getting that little bit of extension through the wrist combined with tricep extension, right? So for anyone that's presenting with triceps tension with the tennis elbow, this is a great option for that. You're also getting some nice scapular work on the other arm, right? So you're sneaking in that proximal stability at the same time. So you can really see with the handles just how much more pronounced and targeted you can be with the extension stretching or strengthening, sorry. Okay, so this next one is a variation I created. It's loosely based off of salute. And so just really quickly, if you don't know salute, we're going from this diamond shape into a bit of like either parallel, like I arm or a Y arm, depending on what you're aiming for. So we're keeping the carriage nice and still. There's isometric work happening in the wrist, right? We're trying to keep it stable while loading through the triceps as well. So with the angle of the strap, it's perfectly situated to create that pull on the wrist extensors as well as the triceps. This is one medium spring. You can, of course, increase it if you'd like, but I do find the medium spring is pretty easy to kind of stick with. And then with this one, I forgot to say, we've got one light spring or one medium spring. I do find that one light spring is generally enough for most people. So it's not common that I would increase the loading to one medium, but it is, of course, it's up to your discretion. And then here we have, for the last phase 2-1, sort of like a hammer curl almost, with the straps, or the handles, I should say, adding in that little bit of wrist extension flick, right? So because of the angle of pull, it's not gravity in a dumbbell, you've got that tension coming from in front of the client. It's really much more targeted for those wrist extensors. And then, of course, you're getting some nice eccentric biceps as well. So 1 medium is an okay place to start. I think people move up to 1 heavy spring fairly quickly. Of course, you can pop in a light spring as well, in addition to the medium spring on your way up to that heavy spring.